Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next speaker series from Modern Ventures. I'm so excited today to announce one of my favorite people on the planet, Sherry Chris. Sherry is the CEO of the Expansion Brands at Realogy. Realogy owns the franchise group companies like Century 21 and Coldwell Banker, Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, where Sherry was a CEO, ERA, where she's also a CEO, and some of the other brands that we'll talk about today. But Sherry started out her career in banking and moved over to real estate in the 80s. And one of the interesting things about Sherry is she is very much an entrepreneur. So what is an entrepreneur? It's someone who has created a tremendous amount of entrepreneurial activities within an organization. And so what we want to talk about today a bit is a lot about Sherry's journey. But she's one of the most influential people in all of residential real estate. And so we want to dig in a little bit on what she thinks the tech and trends and other things going on in the residential space, as well as opportunities we see in the future. So welcome, Sherry.
Constance, thank you. That was a lengthy intro, but it's so good to be with you here today. And you're one of my favorite people as well. So I wish that we could hug in person, but soon.
Zoom it will be.
Yes, exactly.
So Sherry, please, if you don't mind, share with our audience today a little bit about your journey. I think it's really fascinating. And so please tell us about where you started here and a little bit more about, how you got here.
Well, if I go way back, and you actually introduced it, Constance, saying that, I started a career in banking in the 80s, which is correct. That's what I wanted my career to be, finance and banking. But then I bought a house when I was in my early 20s. And I was fascinated with the way that it all unfolded and the, I guess, lack of customer service. And of course, being a young, very energetic and inquisitive woman, I thought, wow, I could do this better. So I threw away my job in finance, got my real estate license, and took the plunge. Of course, a couple of years into it, I realized that selling real estate wasn't the highest and best use of my skill set. And, for the people listening today, and for everyone that I talk to, I always try and guide people to what is the highest and best use of you. It doesn't have to be CEO of a company. It doesn't have to be president of the United States, but where do you thrive? And so I finally found where my sweet spot was back then and is, and that is helping others with a technology kind of twist to it, but also a high level of customer service.
So I think that's a kind of good segue into sort of differentiation, right? Like, so you eventually, maybe talk a little bit about how you got introduced into Realogy, and then from there, kind of took an iconic brand, Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, and turned it into, Better Homes and Gardens, and turned it into Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate. And in a time of really downturn too. So maybe talk a little bit about that experience and that.
Absolutely. And so I joined Realogy in 2006. I was actually brought on as the chief operating officer for Coldwell Banker globally, and with thousands of offices, many agents. And within about a year, Realogy asked me to move over and start a new brand, Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate. And so that was in 2007. And we signed a 100-year licensing agreement, very excited, launching in July of 2008. And then suddenly, of course, the financial crisis and ultimately a recession and downturns everywhere, but certainly in the real estate space, like we've never seen before. So I launched in the middle of that, and I did have a few sleepless nights. But what I ultimately realized is that there's always a need for a brand if you believe in it. And I believe in this brand wholeheartedly. I believed in it 13 years ago, and I believe in it even more so today. Of course, Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate is just one of the brands that I oversee. But, I think a lesson here is that you need to believe in yourself and what you're doing. And it doesn't matter what the forces are around you, those forces that you don't have control over, you need to make sure that you're focused on what you have control over as an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur.
So maybe talk a little bit about that. I mean, you kind of, even taking a new brand into market, you were sort of a disruptor of yourself. I mean, even you said it in the beginning, like you thought you could do real estate better. And we are seeing, well, I don't know, not a day goes by probably when I don't hear that pitch from someone. I think I can do real estate better. And so, yes. And honestly, I mean, I've been hearing that for more than a decade now. And I think it was back in, a dozen years ago when Zillow came in and said, we're going to do real estate better and we're going to replace all the agents. And, since then they've found it better, more or less, usually to work with the agents, as most technology companies tend to do. And, but, we still hear people all the time coming in and saying, look, we can do real estate better. We've got the technology to do it. Why hasn't technology taken over real estate? Why do realtors still exist?
It's a really good question, and it's talked about all the time. But the simple answer, Constance, is that the most important part of the real estate transaction, the most important part of moving a family from one home to another, is the relationship between that family and the agent. And so that was really what I was focused on back in 2008 in launching the Better Homes and Gardens real estate brand, because first off, it's a lifestyle brand, and it's one of the most widely recognized brands across the country and beyond for lifestyle, for design, cooking, barbecuing, gardening, all of those great things. And so it was a natural to flow and to take all of those wonderful assets and move them into real estate. But would anyone care? And so one of the things that we did early on before we launched was a series of consumer surveys, particularly focused at millennials back then, because, 13 years ago, we thought, it didn't ultimately happen. It's starting to now, and we can talk about that later. But we thought that they were going to move our industry in such a significant way. And, it's taken longer than we thought. But what we found was that group admire brands that stand for something. So we launched with a stated set of core values, like many of the most popular brands today have, not every brand. And we really talked about lifestyle and community and the importance of that. And we focused on the consumer, and the consumers that we surveyed told us that they wanted to align themselves with a brand that gives back to the world in a way. And there are many very, very successful and popular brands that do that, but not all of them. And so we decided to really dive in and be the first consumer-focused brand. And when you think about real estate brands today, most of them are not focusing specifically on the consumer. The brand is focusing on brokers who are focusing on agents, and it kind of stops there. And so that was exciting to me because, we found a gap in our industry that maybe this brand could fill. And that's where I, rode off in a somewhat different direction to help fill that gap. And that's been, an exciting 13 years.
So you said you said a lot of really interesting things there. So number one, you were targeting millennials 13 years ago. So they were like 13, right? So
No.
So, well, okay.
Millennials are getting older now.
Millennials. So like, number one, so just millennials overall. I mean, they're the ones that you think of. Well, they're the ones that everyone says to me, well, they're going to be digital only. They're going to be digital only. Like they're the ones that really don't need the realtor. But we saw, and then I think the trend you're probably alluding to, like, that didn't quite happen yet, is that the millennials started doing things just later than we all anticipated.
Right.
But COVID has sort of pushed some of that, right? Like, and I always said, people said, oh, millennials are never going to buy a home. They're going to be renters forever. And I always said, yeah, right, until they have a 5-year-old. And, you have to move to the suburbs because of schooling. And of course, COVID is like, well, even if you have a 2-year-old, you need to get out of that apartment because you're stuck. And so anyways, as we saw sort of some of the flight to the suburbs, particularly with the millennials.
Yeah.
What did you see in terms of real estate and your brands?
And we're talking about over the past 12 months, 12 to 14 months.
Yeah.
It's been so interesting. So here's what we've seen is that, when lockdown hit us, and that was, that date I'll never forget, March 13th, 2020, where we closed our headquarters, everyone did. And we're basically in limbo for about 6 weeks or so, when some early adopters and primarily, but not exclusively, high net worth individuals and families said, hell no, I'm not going to be in this house for a year. I'm going to move. And so that kickstarted the explosion that we're seeing now, followed by others that were not high net worth individuals, but who said the same thing. So they moved to states that were more tax friendly, that maybe lower average sale price. And then we had millennials who said to themselves, wow, a lot of people are moving here. And I don't want to simplify it, and mortgage rates are at an absolute historic low. So we're going to buy houses too. And that's really what started and kickstarted what we're experiencing today, followed by those people that take their time and think everything through and look for the best schools and what do I want the next phase of my life to look like long term. And now those people are moving. And one of the things that's happening out there, Constance, is that everyone's talking about a shortage of listings. There's not a shortage of listings. We're going to have more sales than ever this year. It'll probably be a record year within our industry. There are just an abundance of buyers. There are too many buyers out there. And when's it going to stop? Nobody really knows, because those strategic thinkers who have been planning to make a move are now the large group who are actually doing it.
Mm-hmm. I read a stat a while ago that something like 90% of buyers and sellers used a realtor a dozen years ago, and 90% of realtors, this is a while ago, use a realtor today. Even with this big move and this big push of the millennials moving, same stat?
Same, absolutely. Even more important today, because many of the properties are what we call off-market listings that never hit the MLS. They're, some people call them pocket listings, where, if I called my realtor and said, hey, if someone's interested in paying X, I might move. There's a lot of that going on. And there's also a lot of proactiveness within the real estate community. And I see it here personally, where smart agents are, actually knocking on doors saying, I have 4 buyers for your home, could we entice you to move? And so that's how the market's being driven now. In a balanced market, listings go on an MLS, buyer contacts an agent, they start looking at 10, 15 properties. Today, people are buying sight unseen, including myself, by the way. I bought my most recent home sight unseen.
So let's talk about that. Sight unseen, you're going to use more technology. And, while the role of the realtor, I guess is different, is still necessary. It's really different now, right? And I think the value that the realtor is providing is really different. The technology that the realtor uses is really different. So maybe talk a little bit about that. How has the role evolved, and what is the role of the future, such that 10 years from now, 90% of consumers are still using that realtor, or are they?
I think they are. And of course, it's hard to predict that far in advance, but certainly today and, into the midterm future, what agents are doing is using technology effectively. It's allowing them to be more efficient in their job. Simple examples, of course, CRM, and then tools like sophisticated video and photography and tools like that are very, very important today because many people are buying sight unseen and feeling comfortable doing it. I mean, what could go wrong? If you go into a home and the hot water heater is older than you thought, are you not going to put an offer in? No, you are. And so technology will continue to enhance. And for those entrepreneurs out there who are looking for the next great opportunity with real estate technology, don't stop, because we need you, and we need to continue to have that that arsenal of technology tools to help our agents be more efficient. But once again, it's the relationship that I think is going to continue to drive it, and the knowledge. A computer does not know when somebody might be thinking of selling. A website does not know that, but a human being does, because they're able to go out there and proactively figure out what's happening in a particular marketplace.
Yeah, and even with all my experience, I mean, coming as a realtor, coming from as a data junkie, coming as a technologist, and for sure knowing that I could sell my house and exactly what it should sell for, and you kind of don't realize that it matters how much sunlight comes in, or what kind of countertop you had, or the exact space that the bedroom versus the office, especially now, has today, and all these different nuances that from a computer generated technology, this is an opportunity for the technologists out there, it's still not there. And even I guess when it does get there, that will end up, I think, being a tool that enhances the very best realtors. Not always the tool that enhances the very best consumers, because like anything, experts tend to know what to do with that data a little bit better than others.
Absolutely. And, if we pull out one thing that you talked about, and that is, when is the sunlight, or how's the sunlight, affecting various rooms in a home? I mean, the old fashioned way of doing it was the agent would say, we're going to come in the morning, and then we'll come in again in the afternoon, and again in the evening. Now you don't have to do that. And, it's important for people to know that these are the types of tools that realtors need to use to help sell real estate quickly and effectively, and make sure that after the sale, when the survey goes out, which is another very effective tool, the online surveys, that the consumer is actually giving a thumbs up and a high rating.
Mm-hmm. So let's move to that, like the thumbs up, the high rating, branding. You're one of the most prolific brand marketers I know. I mean, you've embraced social media since the early days. And I think that you have built a very great brand, both for yourself as well as for your companies. And
Yes.
And I think that that's important for many reasons. I mean, I think we find that our companies are our brands, and vice versa. And whether we like it or not, we work a lot, and so they become kind of extensions of one another. And I'd love to hear how you think about it, and why did social media become something that was important to you, and how do you use it?
It's so important. And what I'm going to say is that in business, whether you're a startup entrepreneur or whatever stage you're at in your work life, that there's one thing that is more important than anything else, and that's your reputation. And so in the pre-technology days, our reputation was basically word of mouth. Yep. Where one person would say, yes, Sherry Chris is a great real estate agent, you should use her. Today, reputation has expanded due to social media, due to the fact that you have to be authentic, and there's nowhere to hide. I mean, if somebody was Googling me today, they'd find out all sorts of things that I'm fine with, because I've maintained what I believe is a very strong and stellar reputation. So it's that word of mouth coupled with the effective use of social media and everything else that helps you. I've worked hard at it my entire career. I made it one of my one of my top goals each year was to make sure that I networked effectively, that I met the right people, that I gave back openly, because that's part of your reputation as well, is not just taking or talking to people, but offering something without asking for anything in return. And so it's all part of that. And you don't have to be, out there on Clubhouse and TikTok and Instagram. But you do have to make sure that you're very mindful of what is out there about you. And that continues to be one of my, excuse me, top priorities today is continuing to do that. I don't need to be on the cutting edge. Like, I am not going to do one of those dances on TikTok. So that's not going to do anything for me. But what I will do is make sure that I portray myself in, professional manner, but also bring some of, the real me into it, the personal me into it as well.
And I think, I don't know if you still do this, but I remember being really impressed early on that this was even some mandates for your team. And you shared with me, I don't know if it's okay to share it here, but I think
Absolutely.
It's okay. You shared with me that you had KPIs for your team to say you needed to do a certain number of posts every day or every week. And that was really important. And I thought that was great, and probably helped catapult your brand a lot.
It did. And, and again, we'll go back a little bit, but one of the things for my brand, for the one brand, and I want to talk about my second brand because it's a very interesting brand as well. But what I did with my team is that we wanted to make sure that we all had consistency on social media, so that every one of us, and of course today it's a no-brainer, but that every team member had a professional profile on LinkedIn, that every team member had, a professional look and feel on Facebook, and then, later Instagram, and that we did not post anything of an offensive nature or, anything political. And so those were our guidelines. And, if you practice that yourself and your team, what I found is that your broker owners that affiliate with you and the agents they learn from you just by observing, and then they start doing that as well. So it's almost like a form of training. But, again, it helps, it helps each and every team member feel proud about their online presence. So this would be like 10 years ago, saying to a prospective franchisee, every social media is very important to us. Every one of our team members has a profile on LinkedIn, and not everyone did back then. There also was a time where we all tried to, as many of us as possible, have a real estate license, because at Realogy, and this is pre-COVID now, we haven't done it during COVID, but we actually had the real estate course, the real estate school in our building. And so team members were allowed to go and get their license. And so if you're talking to a broker, an agent, you can say, yeah, I'm licensed too. I don't sell real estate, but I know exactly what you're talking about. So it's just increasing your profile as much as you can.
So I think you said some really interesting things there, interesting themes that bubbled up of what you just said, which is kind of a notion of leading by example and walking the walk, talking the talk. And then the second big thing that jumped out at me is know your consumer.
Yes.
And be able to relate to them. And honestly, I see it all the time, whether it's early startups or late stage companies approaching our industry, and time over time after time, they talk about what I want you to do as a company. Like, I want you to buy my product. I want you to use my product. I want you to use my agent, or I want you to use, whatever it is, versus what my product will do for you. Like, how will it add value to you?
Exactly.
And that's one of the big things that we always talk about. And, as you know, within our companies, to try to help them understand, share how you will help them. And you can't do that effectively unless you know what their pain points are. And so
exactly. You're spot on. And, there are many, I hear sales pitches every week. And, by the way, one thing that I always do is take a call. So, it doesn't matter whether
Be
it's
careful, be careful.
I know. Well, nobody has my phone number. Yeah, it is out there, by the way, my cell phone, but I do so I'll always take a call because here's the thing, you never know. You never know. And even if it's a product that, I'm pretty sure we're not going to be able to use, you just never know, because in talking to the founder, I might find out that they're developing something else that we could use, and we could beta that, or we could be, the first brand or company to use that. So something that I, coach my team members as well, is that always take the call.
Yeah. First rule of thumb is show up, right?
Show up, exactly. But, getting back to your previous comment around how to sell your product. Yeah, you need to find out what the pain point is, and you need to demonstrate how, that person who's the buyer would be better off with your product than without it, rather than just, going into like sales pitch 101. You need to take it up a notch, make sure that they see, oh, okay, if I buy this, this is what the outcome will be.
So maybe that's a good segue into talking a little bit more about your company, and then I'll wrap us up with I always like to wrap these with your advice to those who are listening here. But going back to kind of this idea of solving a pain point and know your customer. So, at Realogy, with these amazing iconic brands of Coldwell Banker and Century 21 and the others, and then bringing in a well-known consumer brand like Better Homes and Gardens, like why the other brands, why the expansion brands? Maybe first explain to everyone listening what they are, and then kind of talk about the why and the what.
Well, at Realogy, we have a portfolio of 6 brands. We have Coldwell Banker, Century 21, ERA, Sotheby's, Better Homes and Gardens, and Corcoran. And so all of those brands have different value propositions. Some are more clearly defined than others. And all of those brands are, at different stages in their, what I'd call brand life cycles. So some of them have peaked, and they're looking at how they can grow in different ways. Other brands have a lot of runway, Better Homes and Gardens being one, because we're 13 years old, and there are a lot of communities and countries that we're not in yet and we can be in. So what we decided to do was take Better Homes and Gardens and ERA is celebrating its 50th birthday next year. So we've got a teenager and a Gen X, I guess, right? And so the teenager is still learning everything. The Gen X has been around for quite some time, and they think they know everything. No, I'm kidding about that. But so what we were able to do with these 2 brands have a lot of runway, because they're similar in size, and they're very different in value proposition, but they're both very passionate. So we have a lifestyle brand, and then we have a brand that really speaks to a strong sense of community, collaboration, giving back, and also being strong locally. And so with 2 very different value propositions, and quite honestly, 2 different price points, BH&G would skew higher than ERA on an average price across the country. So it might seem odd to bring 2 brands together and share a leadership team. But what we were able to do was find efficiencies to allow us not to save costs necessarily, but to invest back in both of those brands. So that was number 1. So we were able to find efficiencies to invest back. Number 2 was we were able to look at best practices that we could share behind the scenes, behind the firewall, with both brands. So BH&G was very strong in social, ERA was not. ERA had some great tools for agents that BH&G did not. So we were able to do that effectively, and take leadership myself as CEO of both brands and my direct reports. And then we built the teams from there. And so it's worked very, very well for us. And, we even sometimes, if there's a prospective broker that expresses an interest in BH&G, but we're already in that area, we'll say, there's another great brand here, and we'll still be, helping you grow. And here it is, and vice versa. So it had never been done before at Realogy, but being the entrepreneur that I am, I put my hand up and said, yes, I like this idea, and I think that we can do something. Because, when you think about people's strengths, one of my personal strengths is that I see things differently than some other people do, where, others would go, no, that's not going to work. The brokers are going to be upset because they want you just with one brand.
It's the way it's always been.
Yeah, it's always been that way. But with these two brands, yes, there was some mild conversation at the time, but now everyone sees, wow, this is okay. And, we have strong leadership, and we're stronger today as two brands under the, expansion brands, which is what we call ourselves internally. Maybe there'll be a third brand that will come at some point in time, but right now we're concentrating on these two. And so I like it personally. And, it's really been a great opportunity during COVID as well to, get to know the ERA brokers, and in some cases, cross-brand help and assistance, which is good.
So this is, one of the things I admire so much about you is, you've really come into a very kind of steady organization that, public company for a long time now that, has a lot of reason not to change. And step by step, you've always helped it evolve. And, I think you came from a, place where technology, there was a dearth of technology, and evolved with the tech. And so, kind of wrapping up on thinking about different advice, and, the kinds of people who are listening in today, some of them run innovation for their organizations. Some of them are trying to approach those people who run innovations for their organizations and change the world and change the industry. And what advice do you have for those people who want to change and innovate and grow everywhere?
It's a very good question. And so I'll start with, I'm sure that there are some startup entrepreneurs in the audience. And I was, I considered myself to be, under the umbrella of a public company. So advice that I got from other entrepreneurs at that time, I utilized, and it actually all came true. And so my advice is that when you're putting your startup team together, just know that that's for the most part not going to be your end team, because there are individuals out there who are, hungry for the startup experience, and they absolutely love it. But, once overall strategy and protocols are put in place, they don't like that anymore. So they'll leave, and you'll probably have 3 turns of staff and key members, knowing that 1 or 2 or 3 of them will be there from start to finish. It's okay. And so I've always followed, the general guideline of your gut tells you when something isn't right with, one of your team members. So don't hesitate to make that change, and don't try and hold on to somebody who wants to go because ultimately they're going to end up leaving anyway. So, stay true to yourself with that. So that's number 1. Number 2 would be, stay in your swim lane for the most part. So don't worry about all the noise out there. Decide what your business model is going to be, but, keep an ear cocked slightly to what's happening. Like, try and stay in front of everything, because you may have to change gears quickly, or you may choose to change gears if your product isn't being, if it's not being widely accepted within the industry. So here's one example of this, is that quite often, the easy way to sell, entrepreneurs think, is to go to the broker, because if you have like 200, 500, 1,000 agents, and the broker likes your product, then suddenly you're going to have this huge audience. That would make sense, but it doesn't work. What works is getting agent buy-in first, because at the broker and brand level, adoption rate is usually very, very low. So it could take you, and would likely take you longer to build that way. So think about starting at the agent level. And, agents are, I don't want to say fickle, but they're, if they see someone else successful using a product, they're like, I need to use that too. So, think about building your brand and your product that way. Don't be narrow minded and narrow focused. And, I talked about believing in yourself, believe in your business and your business model, because if you don't, it's going to show. And so you need to believe in yourself. And Constance, I've met so many great entrepreneurs through you and Modern Ventures, and some of them have become friends, and each and every one of them, they've believed in themselves. And that's what makes me smile every day, and it's what keeps me going. So that's my advice.
Well put. Thank you so much, Sherry. I really appreciate you being here, and it's can't say enough about how much we appreciate you being such a good friend of Modern, and really a friend of mine. So thank you.
And the feeling is absolutely mutual. So thank you for having me on today, and look forward to talking to you very soon.
Great. And what was your phone number? Just kidding.
If somebody's very, very good, they'll find it.
They will find it. That's right.
DM on Facebook, Insta, Twitter, and always happy to talk to people with great ideas.
All right. Thanks again, Sherry.